Imagine standing at the center of a snow-blanketed valley 20,000 years ago. The ground beneath your feet begins to tremble in violent, rhythmic thuds. Out of the glacial mist of the Ice Age, a 9-ton mountain of muscle standing over 4 meters tall looms into view. It is a woolly mammoth. It carries a hide as thick as armor, an impenetrable layer of insulating fat, and a pair of curved tusks over 3 meters long, 2 lethal scythes, ready to crush anything in their path. Facing this monstrous beast is you, a naked, fragile primate devoid of sharp claws, fangs, or burst speed. Standing next to a mammoth, you barely reach its knee. In terms of pure biology, this is not a fight. It is a foregone massacre. Yet the fossil record across the globe tells a completely different story. These ancient sites do not contain the remains of a crushed human race. Instead, they are littered with mammoth bones, bearing unmistakable butchery marks and stone projectile points deeply embedded in load-bearing joints. Humans were not getting lucky. We were not merely scavenging carcasses. Prehistoric humanity actively, systematically hunted down and turned the apex giants of the food chain into dinner. How did a physically weak primate rewrite the laws of life and death? The secret did not lie in raw courage. It lay in a chain of physics-defying tactical maneuvers, generational traps that conquered time, and a biological strategy so ruthless it bordered on extreme torture. For decades, popular media and Hollywood documentaries have drilled a classic image into our minds: a group of bare-chested hunters screaming wildly as they hurl long spears into the flank of a giant beast, like Olympic javelin throwers. But modern physics and mathematics have thrown cold water on that illusion. Biomechanical tests prove that the throwing force generated by a human arm, even the strongest and best trained, yields remarkably low kinetic energy. That force is utterly useless against the thick fur, keratinized hide, and 30-centimeter thick layer of fat protecting a woolly mammoth. Throwing a spear by hand is the equivalent of flicking a toothpick at a tank and hoping it blows out a tire. Because of this, humans chose a far more sophisticated approach. They did not use their own strength. They weaponized the momentum of their prey. This was the technical art of pike hunting. When a mammoth charged blindly at 40 kilometers per hour, the kinetic energy generated by its 9-ton body was astronomical. Prehistoric hunters did one thing: they firmly braced the base of a heavy wooden pike against the hard ground, angling the meticulously crafted Clovis stone point upward at a 45-degree angle, aiming directly at the chest or vital organs of the charging beast. Applying Newton's third law of motion regarding action and reaction, humans completely removed themselves from the force equation. When the mammoth slammed into the planted pike, its own terrifying weight and forward momentum drove the stone blade deep through its thick hide, severing major blood vessels. The true genius lay in the internal engineering of the weapon. Once the stone point pierced inside, the extreme compressive pressure from the animal's ongoing charge caused the wooden shaft mounted directly behind the point to splinter and expand horizontally within the wound channel. This mechanism functioned exactly like a modern hollow-point bullet. It created an internal trauma cavity 3 to 4 times larger than the initial entry wound. The more aggressively the beast charged forward, the deeper it drove its own death warrant into its chest. Humans did not kill the mammoth. They forced the mammoth to commit suicide using its own colossal power. If the planted pike was the triumph of physics, the massive trap pits discovered in Tultepec, Mexico, were the ultimate answer to engineering and time. Before recent archaeological breakthroughs, researchers believed prehistoric humans were merely opportunistic nomads hunting whatever they stumbled upon. But the discovery of artificial trenches 2 meters deep, with perfectly vertical 90-degree walls, completely shattered the old narrative. Humans did not dig random holes. They mapped the migration routes of the mammoths over years, identifying bottleneck trails the herds were forced to take to find water, and transformed those pathways into killing fields. They excavated a series of continuous modular pit traps. By utilizing fire torches, thunderous noises from striking wooden planks, and coordinated shouts, hunters successfully drove the herds into a state of absolute panic. When a giant herd of megafauna panics, their instinct is to blindly follow the matriarch. The battle at this point was handed over to the topography. The leading mammoths, pushed violently from behind by dozens of their own stampeding herd members, were stripped of any ability to break and plunged directly into the vertical pits. Locked in a deep trench, the beast's mobility dropped to zero. But what truly shocked scientists was the dating of the soil strata within the trenches. This pit system was maintained, cleared of old bones, repaired and reused continuously for 500 years. Pause for a moment to reflect on that number. 500 years represents roughly 20 generations of humans continuously passing down a single survival code. A child born into the tribe would be taken to the edge of the pit by their grandfather, who would point down and say, "This is where our ancestors fed our family, and you must maintain it." This was no longer just hunting. This was the construction and operation of a cross-century hunting infrastructure, a temporal accumulation of knowledge that no other animal on Earth could ever replicate. The most ruthless weapon humans possessed was not held in their hands. It was engineered into their skin. Humans possess a biological advantage that amounts to a cheat code in the natural world, the capacity to sweat across their entire body surface, thanks to a system of 2 to 5 million sweat glands beneath the skin. This direct evaporative cooling mechanism allows us to run and continuously lower our body temperature without stopping. In stark contrast, the woolly mammoth, much like modern elephants and large ungulates, lacks an efficient sweating mechanism. They are forced to dissipate heat primarily through panting or by relying on large ear tissue, which was severely downsized in mammoths to prevent freezing in glacial temperatures. However, respiratory cooling has a fatal flaw when an animal is forced to run continuously at a high intensity. Its breathing rate becomes locked in synchronization with its stride to maintain chest cavity pressure. This completely chokes off their ability to shed heat through respiration. Knowing this biological vulnerability, humans engaged in persistence hunting. They did not need to run faster than the mammoth. They only needed to maintain a relentless steady trot, tracking the prey for 5 to 8 hours under the unforgiving sun. Every time the mammoth stopped to catch its breath or graze, the hunting party reappeared on the horizon, firing harassing arrows to force it back into motion. The giant beast was driven into a downward spiral of biological torture. Its core body temperature climbed steadily, from 37 degrees Celsius to 39 degrees, eventually crossing the critical danger threshold of 42 degrees Celsius. Its blood began to thicken, its internal organs systematically failed, and its brain suffered catastrophic heat stroke. The 9-ton monster would ultimately drop to its knees, collapsing from total physiological exhaustion before a single spear ever touched its hide. Humans use the sun and the endurance of the natural ecosystem as their executioner. When you dissect the core of these epic Ice Age survival battles, a profound truth emerges, one that is both a source of immense pride and deep haunting humanity. Never ascended to the top of the food chain by creating weapons of greater destructive power than nature itself. We conquered the planet by hacking into the operating system of nature. Our ancestors looked deeply into the immutable laws of the universe and turned them into tools. We used the mammoth's own mass to tear open its flesh. We used the thermal dynamics of the atmosphere to burn its organs from within. And we used the natural cliffs of the earth to break its bones. It was a razor-sharp mindset that transformed biological vulnerability into absolute sovereignty through a profound understanding of the world. Yet the ultimate weapon and the most terrifying aspect of humanity is time. A pit trap maintained across 500 years does not just speak to engineering, it speaks to accumulation. Humans are the only species that stands on the shoulders of giants, turning the knowledge of the dead into weapons for the living. The mammoth of the next century fought with the exact same instincts as the century before, but the human of the next century carried the bloody, hard-won experience of 20 preceding generations. That is where the asymmetry of this war truly lay. Instinct stood against history, and instinct lost. This ruthless efficiency allowed us to survive a brutal ice age, but it also left a permanent scar on the ecological map. the complete extinction of the mammoth, and a vast array of megafauna species roughly 13,000 years ago. When human tools became too perfect, we accidentally wiped out our greatest benefactor, the very creature that gave us meat to eat for warmth and bones to build our shelters. Today, looking at the modern world, I see that this same mindset of leveraging nature and accumulating time operates flawlessly under brand new names. We split atomic bonds to extract energy. We build artificial intelligence algorithms to automate knowledge across generations, and we exploit the Earth's resources with industrial efficiency. Our ancestors started at the absolute baseline with a stone-tipped stick and a deep hole in the ground. We have proven that humanity can conquer any beast of the era through collective intelligence. Yet the lesson buried in the mammoth bones at the bottom of the Toltepec pits remains clear: if a species possesses the supreme power to manipulate the laws of nature, but lacks the wisdom to know when to stop, its own ruthless efficiency will ultimately dig a 500-year trap for its own future.